Hello again, everybody. The whispering circles who are saying Doctor Who looks tired and Rtd's formula is not working is growing quite loud. More media outlets and articles have voiced their concerns about the complexity of plots, the moral diatribes battering our patronised heads, and that the show has got a little too smug and pleased with its virtue signalling storylines. So, this is a moment not too soon, and we can be prepared. We can create our own manifesto, as I outlined in yesterday's show, to recruit followers and supporters to, and then present it to the BBC. I mean, let's copy Rtd's language at a recent LGBTQ award ceremony, and let's have a look. And we meet in cellars at night, and we talk, and we plot, and we sing, and we paint, and we manifest ideas. We go on marches, we go on sponsor. Oh, that's a problem. We do signatures, we attack, we talk to politicians, we organize ourselves. In the end, what we do is educate. We take everything we know and we go out there and we educate. So I'm taking his language and I'm spinning it back at him with our manifesto, because we can march, we can get signatures, we can go forward too. I don't need to meet in a cellar. Well, this will do. Okay, so that's the plan. And knowing our Doctor Who writers are burdened by so much politics and bile, I did ask on Tuesday whether anyone knows how to write good Doctor Who anymore. So this Thursday think tank is so needed for us to convene and plan and plot. Your ideas thread today are the stars, and we will debate the best ideas to see if we can get agreement to take a joint manifesto forward to the BBC. This is exactly what the think tank was created for, to explore one of the topics of the week in Doctor Who and put the comments and views of the thread central to the discussion. Now, we haven't got John today. He also works, you know. So basically, I've got two for the price of one. Oh, hey. Got my friend in America. Here we go. Here's Cliff. Hello, Cliff.
Hello, everybody.
He's got plenty of ideas. He was charged up yesterday. And of course, he's very shy. He's very quiet. You may not have heard of him ever before. Problem being, here he is.
Hello, chat.
I know. We're going to try and bring you out of your shell tonight.
Oh, thank you. I'm a wallflower.
So just to remind everybody, because obviously it's not about me tonight. That was last night, so to speak. But basically, as a reminder, if anyone missed it, the argument's getting too lazy, I think, about, oh, well, let's just have a hiatus. Let's have a few years of no Doctor Who, and then it'll kind of rectify itself. No, bloody, that's not guaranteed. I also wanted to kind of point out that we are in a dire position. We've lost 1.1 million viewers since Space Babies. That's 42% of the audience that watched Space Babies. So we do need to do a course correction, a big one. And then I showed everybody last night, there's season 1 with Eccleston's figures, 10 million and just below, and where we are now. It really is dire. And RTD has tried things, Chibnall's tried things, Moffat's tried things. Things need to change quite clearly. And so obviously last night, and thanks for you updating my slides, Cliff. But basically, lots of ideas. I talked about two writers' rooms to sort things out in 2026, for example. And then talked about maybe Paul McGann being interregnum doctor while we get our crap together. Lots of ideas about the format. And I'll come back to that later, obviously, because that was yesterday. Everybody. Please tune in on that. So basically, that's where we are. So I suppose I might as well get your opinions first, just overall, lads, just to kind of warm up the thread, and then I'll keep seeing what they're saying. So, Cliff, how far were you happy with that manifesto as a shape outline idea?
I was 93.9% on board with everything he said. Yeah, I mean, we've talked offline and stuff like that, and the similarities between that and where we are now, where the show is now, and where it was in '96, okay, is night and day. This was back then. It was a situation where the BBC somehow, for whatever reason, was watching diminishing returns and wasn't happy with it. It was still getting a lot of views. Now it's not a question of bad, good. We had a good doctor. We had good stories. We had viewership. We had a fan base, and it was, still mostly in the UK, a little bit in the US, but we're lucky it did come back in 2005. So right now, is what's there salvageable? I think that the idea of having a neutral space, using McGann as a kind of a bridge between old fan base and people who have no idea really who he is, would be perfect. He can step right in, still be the character, but without any preconceived notions from anybody else, and approach it as a sort of a spin-off in a way, something to keep you sated until the series returns, and just never explain that it's not going to return anytime soon. We've got this guy for the time being. I think it's a great idea.
I mean, I'm not saying this is, as a fanboy, I need Paul McGann back. I try to be extremely objective, Lee, but my theory was, just in a nutshell, was I want us to keep Doctor Who on the TV while the writers' rooms get to work and sort out the long-term future of the Doctor Who programme. So therefore, we needed an uncontroversial choice. David Tennant, overused, no. But Paul McGann still looks like Paul McGann, and we could use him. And that was my theory there. But Lee, what did you reckon to the manifesto?
I like Cliff, was pretty much on board with pretty much most, if not all, of what you were saying. I think that the only way, really, because New Who is itself quite a different show to Doctor Who. I've always thought it was a different show. I've never seen it as a continuation. I've always seen it as a reboot. And it just has far too much contradictory stuff in there, as well as too much baggage. It's so toxic and divisive now. I think it's sealed its own fate, really, that you almost can only siphon it off into its own pocket universe or bubble. I'm not saying get rid of it entirely. I'm just saying, you could probably say, well, Time War, that fractured time, whatever. So the Eighth Doctor, that's where it started. So he's fractured off. All that happened in that fractured universe, and this one is the continuation of the classic series. So you start off with McGann, an uncontroversial choice. It's probably the only white man that they'll ever allow to play the Doctor again. If you don't start with him to make it look a signal, it's okay. And I think that he would be good. I mean, even if he was, a one-season Doctor or whatever, just to get in, absolutely, and then go from there.
So that's our starter for 10, everybody. We've got detail. Don't you worry, everybody. We've got detail, and I will be bringing you in, and the lads will be giving their feedback on what they think of your ideas, as well as them throwing in their ideas. So the point is this: we're going to look at tonight choice of Doctor, and how the Doctor should be presented in the future. So I've got feedback from people writing into me last night, so we'll discuss those ideas. So the Doctor, the format, we'll talk about my TARDIS death trap idea. We'll talk about style and genre and all the rest of it. We'll talk about, and you saw Lee tiptoeing into it there, plot going forward, plot dealing with some of our issues from the past. So that's the show tonight, everybody. So plenty to talk about, and so I'm going to start us off with, let's face it, we need to start with the Doctor. Sorry, no, we don't. We start with General. So let's have a look. I just want to kind of get these. I asked Lee and Cliff for some of their ideas generally. So here we go. Jim Hillis. Cast a compelling lead actor who has weight and charisma. Let's have a time-traveling police box, a compelling female lead companion, no sex, no sexual references, scary, edgy, intelligent storytelling, no current-day politics, wit, humour, no soap opera. Let's have Jeopardy. No callbacks to New Who, no Tennant, no Davies, no Moffat, no Chibnall. Gosh, Jim, you sound like Chris Eccleston.
100% agree with all of that.
Yeah,
I really do.
And then we've got Julian. Why not pause Doctor Who? Now, here we go. This is, I always like this because, you give so far. Why not pause Doctor Who and do a series based on the Master in between? You could use the finale of the Masters, want to introduce a new Doctor. So let's just remind everybody what we're talking about here. Yeah. Sorry, I had to do that.
I was worried there for a minute.
I've sold my soul to the devil. No, but yes, right. I'm going to say my opinion dead concisely because I said no callbacks. Actually, no master, no Daleks, no Cybermen. So actually, I'm saying to Julian, no, but I'm not God. What do you reckon, Cliff?
No, I think that's exactly the way to go. I mean, when Tom Baker started, it was a revision of the Pertwee years, right? We're getting back off planet. We didn't see Cybermen for
No.
We did sort of right away, but Daleks and stuff were quickly left behind. They got it out of the way and didn't touch it again for years. And it's the way to go. Make it more about the characters that you're telling the story about, which is the Doctor and the companions he's traveling with.
Yeah. Lee, what do you reckon on the master one? Because I don't like the idea of a spin-off now. We were assuming this spin-off's going to somehow land.
Go ahead, Lee.
No, you finish what you're saying, Cliff.
I was going to say the flavor's there. They're saying the same thing you're saying. They're looking at it from the perspective of putting the master in that place. You're saying make the Doctor and have that interim.
Well, you see, the reason is, and that's why I'll bring in Lee for him to say what he thinks about the idea, is because I don't feel as I've had Doctor Who for a few years now. So can I have some Doctor Who, please? I don't want them limit master. I want Doctor Who.
Yeah, I think really that's a good idea in principle, but only if the show was coming back after it had been successful and people still know who the master is. If we're bringing this thing back, it needs to be after a fairly long hiatus, enough for people to forget all the bad stuff and miss the good stuff. And I think the way you bring back the good stuff is by reintroducing a very strong lead character, a very strong female lead character, and bring back the adventure and fun, and go intelligent, go deep, go dark, and make it thrilling, And I think really it's a nice idea, but it's something that would have to be if it was after a short hiatus and the show was still popular.
Yeah. So we're going to make decisions as we go through. So like I said, with the usual think tank thread, this is how we're going to do it. Yeah. Paul Cornwall, the last one on the general show. I enjoyed Doctor Who up to Capaldi's series. Then it went to woke and too crap and too much into sexual identity. And there's nothing wrong with the Daleks and Cybermen coming into Doctor Who. Definitely need to scrub 13 to 15 out of the timeline. He's very angry.
See that?
Yeah. I do like the longer episodes, but needs 2 episodes per story. And let's get it away from woke Disney. So that's basically where he's going there. So we get the vibe. Now, you heard the lads are dying to start talking about the Doctor. So I'm going to get into that and let's see where we go with this discussion about how we can save this show and what type of show should it be. So, of course, my manifesto said for lots of reasons, hopefully being as clinical and tactical as possible, I think Paul McGann is the one to do it. An interregnum doctor, so to speak. He's been the Doctor. I don't care what colour skin he is. He's already been chosen in the past. Therefore, we don't have to get down the DEI nonsense for a few more years. Now, people have got opinions. I'll show some of them and I'll see what the lads think and the thread, and then we're going to liven it up a bit more. I really think McGann says TMR would be an excellent choice. He seems to be popular with the fans and probably helps draw back the fans that have walked away saying they'd never come back. And he has the acting ability to interest the casual viewer as well. Jim Hillis, cast a compelling lead actor who has weight and charisma. He mentions others. I'll come to them in a moment. Eddie Day, I'm not sucking up, but your manifesto would work and does sound brilliant. I love the McGann idea. Nigel Walker, Paul McGann would be good if he's willing. And then they mentioned Stephen Mangan and Richard Dormer, who, there they are. Game of Thrones and that. So Opening gambits, Cliff. Who are we going to choose? How are we going to go forward? How will the Doctor be presented?
I'd always struggle with this. I think I always gravitated towards my doctors were the very, 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 very end of Pertwee and then Tom, right? So there needs to be a sense of curiosity, a sense of know-it-all, and a sense of acerbic, quality. And I think as long as those aspects of the personality are in it, anybody could kind of step in the framework that you set. What somebody said in one of those pull quotes you had is that McGann already brings, a representation with him, brings some of the fan base back that's probably jumped ship to this point, and allows that reset with the people that don't know. You could still say, yeah, he was the Doctor before, but never mention it beyond that, and you're just on the adventures. I think that the only place where I kind of it shouldn't have anything to do with Gallifrey, nothing about don't even really mention any of that, and make, like, I think one of the key things that I really liked about your ideas here, we'll probably get to it a little bit later when we get to the dangerous TARDIS, is that it doesn't work right. That was always what got us from one story to the next in the sort of the classic era. Is that you never knew where it was going to take you. And so when you got into a fix, hopping back in the TARDIS and getting out of there just simply wasn't one of the better options. You still had to stick with it, figure out, and help out. This has a lesson in and of itself. So I think all those things would be good elements.
Okay. So Lee, your first chance to talk about where we go with the Doctor. Obviously, there's two things going on at once here. One is the interregnum idea, and then, of course, the character of the Doctor going forward, and whether we set rules about he'll never switch to a woman again or this. I'm just saying that these are options. So where do you go, Lee?
Yeah, I think, you can hand wave things away quite easily, in the line, he could say, oh, I've had a bit of an identity crisis, but I'm all right. Look, I think we all know, if we're not kidding ourselves, who the Doctor is. Okay, it's not rocket engineering. It's pretty simple. Not to say that I would have been fine if Patterson Joseph would have been the Doctor. I would have been pretty good with that. But I don't really want to know who the next actor will be. Hopefully it'll be off air long enough for time to pass, for someone new and interesting and fun to come along, and for the politics and craziness to die down. But yeah, I liked your idea about not having all the psychic paper, not having the sonic screwdriver, using his wits, having a faulty TARDIS again, and being very lore light to start off with. I mean, you could passing make reference. I was talking to my friend Jack, and we were talking about what we would do if we brought it back, and we were talking about lore stuff as well. But if you were to delve into that later on, I would bring back the mystery to the Time Lords, kind of undo all that sort of stuff from the 70s, where they became quite boring and dull, and maybe down the line sort of focus on Gallifrey and the history of that, and that really the Time Lords that we've seen before were a cargo cult, and actually the real Time Lords became so advanced and so evolved that they sort of became more than corporal bodies. But that's just fan wank. So you have to be careful with lore like that. But it will unfortunately at some point pop up. So
Well, I was thinking the same thing. I've got loads of ideas how to the whole erasure of post Capaldi to Shooty. I would love to do that, but that's where we're starting to get into fanfic, and there's a ton of different opinions on the way to erase and restart.
Although those two Doctors were fanfic.
Well,
most of you who is.
I still say I have really no problem with Jodie. There just was no explanation, and that's part of the narrative process of storytelling, is to explain why it happened. Why all of a sudden do we have a female Doctor?
It was presented as if it was self-evident, or just
Well, we just
Of
have
course she turned it, and it's always been like that, apparently. You know, it's that hand waving,
Yeah.
which I really took
Yeah.
exception to.
I-
That's just
and this is what I mean. You can imagine these writers' rooms I'd want to set up if I was the pretend showrunner and script editor. Is hold on a minute here. It's that could be a debate for weeks in the writers' room, because you know they'll be going, but what's the problem? Like you're saying, Cliff, with maybe a female Doctor of the Future, and you're going, well, hold on. This is where you really have to get to the brass tacks. For example, could you say the same thing about the James Bond franchise? Can you say the same thing about Macbeth becoming Lady Macbeth, becoming Lady? You know, is there a point when you're going, okay, I know what you want to do. I know what you want to say about society, Mr. Showrunner, and all the rest of it, but not with the program that's established it as a male lead. I mean, that's where I was coming from. And to try and wave it away. I'm just giving my steer, but it's open to the collective. The other thing I want to throw into the pot of our discussion on the Doctor, everybody, is when it got later on last night in my discussion, a few people were starting to push back saying you can't have a Doctor who's 70. You can't, because Paul McGann's 60 odd, 65, 66. And so they're saying, you can't. And I was going, hold on. Isn't this the game we're in now? The tick boxing game, that you have to have somebody who's about 25, black and gay, or you have to have this, that. And no. Stop the box ticking. If there's a fit 70-year-old who can bloody well act, I'll have him. And you know, why are we ageist? Come on, let's open this out. If they're an interesting character, because what you were saying, Lee, if we get rid of the psychic paper and the sonic screwdriver and we make the Doctor think, the Doctor has to think if he's knackered.
Yeah, and he has to have that wisdom, and it has to show, I think. And I think what better way to show it than on his face? And I think, bless him, William Hartnell, I know he's only in his mid-50s, but he was clearly playing someone a lot older.
Yeah.
And I don't see any problem with introducing the 8th Doctor, or, you know, not necessarily referring to him by that moniker, but just referring to him as the Doctor, but having him maybe 70 or in his 70s, whatever, for one season, you know. And again, like with the first Doctor, you have the companion or companions picking up the pace for him if he's struggling. I'm sure people in their 70s today are more like the people in the 50s back then.
Yeah.
So I think he'll be more than fine. And I think it kind of gives a bit of a sort of nod and wink to the history of the show, to the origins of the show. So you've got a fresh new start. You have a familiar face, but he's almost like a surrogate first Doctor in a way that you can sort of start the whole thing again. And I would say that for whatever reason, you know, it's all new to him again. And that, you know, I mean, I was talking to Jack about this, that, you know, you can have it that he doesn't know the Cybermen, he doesn't know who the Daleks are. It's all fresh. Everything's new. And you don't know why, to those who follow the show. And those who are new to the show will be learning fresh through his eyes again. So I think it can work if you're clever enough to write it that way.
Now,
The way that it works, you know.
Now, Cliff, I know you'll be dying to come back in, but what I'll do is I'll keep prodding on, and then you bring in your ideas on, you know, because I'll keep the sections going. There's a fair few sections here.
I just want to come back around.
Yeah. The Doctor's central to the whole blooming thing. So, of course, you know, now the format. So, everybody, we talked about the Doctor and the characterization. We're also talking about the format. How do we make this show survive? So, a few ideas. My idea was a 5 or 6 episode series with Paul McGann's Doctor, 4 cliffhangers, therefore, and the final episode, it's a multi-Doctor story, and the Paul McGann is almost like passing the torch to the brand new Doctor. No number. I think we've got to stop obsessing about it. I think it's a media obsession anyway. Who cares if it's the 5th, the 10th, the 25th Doctor? It is the Doctor, the definitive article. And that's what you need to go for. So I wanted serialized back. I think this idea of wham bam thank you ma'am episodes is gone. It's too babyish, it's too simplistic, and it's too on the nose when it wants to preach. Now, Jim Hillis here says 4x4 times 25-minute episodes, shown twice weekly. He likes, obviously, clearly the Peter Davison years when we had that. Tenacious, every story should be at least 2 episodes of 45 each, as was experimented with in the mid-80s, if we could attain an episode count of 26 per season, we could have 13 stories each year. This could give every story a cliffhanger ending and more time for character development and building of tension, things sorely lacking at present. And I just want to check. I've got, I'll come back. And Nigel Walker is just saying, I think I agree that we need cliffhangers, but he says 8 episodes isn't enough. We need about 12 again, but you don't need a massive budget. So,
well, you could halve the budget and double the episodes.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it, we've got about 26 episodes since the specials to the spin-off, plus Christmas.
Do we know what they're spending per episode right now?
Go on, so
what's the per episode cost right now to get us 8 of this garbage?
Don't know.
About 20 million, isn't it?
I'm also a massive Stargate SG1, Stargate whatever fan, and that show ran 22 episodes, hour-long ones, at around 1.2, 1.5 million per, and we're I mean that's probably the catering budget.
It's about it's about 10, 12 million, isn't it?
It's insane.
It's 100 million for 2 seasons, wasn't it?
Truck out to a quarry, double your episodes and spend the same budget, and don't do all your fancy CGI and these grandiose set pieces.
Yeah,
get back. Let the audience have, a chance to use their imagination, and I think it's so patronizing. These people are so patronizing to their audience that they think you're too stupid to understand unless everything's underlined with a full stop, and everything has to be explained. And I would also get rid of the behind the scenes programs afterwards as well. I know that they're popular, but when you have the producer or the writer explaining to you what happened, it really sticks in my craw. I think you're undervaluing your own audience. You think, quite honestly, their audience is a bit thick. So, to be honest,
well, I mean, their audience is still me. I would love to be their audience. What they don't seem to understand is what the problem seems to be is they don't care. They don't care that we want to be watching Doctor Who. They don't seem to. It's.
You're not worthy enough. You're not worthy.
Yeah. We're not worthy enough. We weren't.
The other thing is, I said it last night, which is, okay, 2005, you landed it overall, RTD. You were the man of the time and you had the right format for the time. But it's a 20-year-old idea now and formula, and it's gone.
Yeah, it's not Buffy. It's not Buffy. No. Buffy's old now. And it's not even Stranger Things.
But the other thing is, I think what really grieves most fans is why have we lost the serialized process, the cliffhangers, the lovely episode 1s, that sort of thing. And it's because he was worried about the fans, the casual viewer who, if they missed part 1 and 2, wouldn't be bothered about part 3. Well, that's an old hat idea. We have catch-up TV now. That's gone. There's no issue with that. Back to serialization, and then you get the whole core and spirit and soul of what Doctor Who was. Doctor Who wasn't a wham bam thank you man kind of program. It just wasn't, and it was never aping an American big budget series. It was always doing it differently. It was much more thoughtful and quirky and actually very imaginative because it had to be. Now, Jess here says 4 episodes, rest for 4, another 4 episodes, rest for 4, another final 4 episodes, tying up all of what's happened over the last 8. So
I don't think that would work because you lose momentum. People forget, people move on. People will tune in 1 week and it's not on, it must be over, and then move on. You can't afford to lose that kind of momentum. I wouldn't think so, quite honestly. And I would also say that you have to consider that people are kind of done with soap operas. I mean, you only need to look at EastEnders. You only need to look at all the TV across the board, especially with the soap operas going on the floor. I think to get people back, you need a consistent series. Not necessarily an arc. You could have serialized stories like in the old classic series. I prefer that format. The only reason they didn't go with that format in 2005 because they thought the Americans wouldn't understand it. Because again, they're doing the thinking for you. You're American, so you don't understand anything. Clearly, that's their logic. But I would also say that people looking at the classic series will form closer bonds with a lot of the consequential characters that come into the stories, much more than all the time spent in the 45-minute episode focusing on so-called character development, that characters you don't even like for most of it, and you get these characters from classic who pop up and deliver their lines, and it's all very Shakespearean, and it's endearing, and you immediately go, oh, you suspend your disbelief and you go with it because they are compelling, fun characters.
So a lot of people in the comments are saying, you know, stories, sets, locations, characters, and my math is different on how the episodes would lay out, because I think you do the serialized. This is like you're saying, Brendan, but I would even prefer. I think it would work better if it was unpredictable, just like the TARDIS. I mean, we started off that way, right? You started off with some teachers getting stuck in an adventure. We don't know where we're going, and then there's cavemen for 3 episodes, and then there's Daleks for 6. So yeah. Keeping it unpredictable, cliffhangers. We don't know if they're getting out of this one. Then where do they go? How long is this one going to last? I think that would engage a new audience because they've not seen that kind of television before.
But also we have to think about future proof, and you know, terrestrial TV is kind of on its last legs. So again, you need to think about how it's consumed and what time people make for it in a very saturated market. I hate using that word.
Yeah, they're still using the word season, and it's even that is a thing of the past, because the season is whatever we drop. We're going to call that a season. It's 8 episodes. Yeah, Andor just came out. It's 12.
But I think
I prefer season to legacy. Sorry, I prefer season to content. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. What I really think Doctor Who needs when we go forward format wise is they need to cleverly think of a way of making sure that for those terrestrial viewers that are there, and I think you have to make sure the footprint is there, that Doctor Who is part of the national consciousness for longer than 2 months. It needs to, if you can't make it big event TV again, what you can make it is, oh, it's there again. It's there. It's part of the wallpaper, because it's easy come, easy go at the moment. I mean, we're halfway through this season already, and I'm thinking we've only just started. And so it needs to be in the national consciousness for longer. So yes, a lot of people are saying, can we have that 26 type episodes again? And if you think of it, we have 5 for the spin-off. We've had 2 Christmas specials, so there's 7. We had the 3 specials, there's 10. And we've had 2 8s, there's 26 episodes of 45. Now, you have that, and you've got 52 episodes there. I know it's not that easy with production schedules and that, but come on, where there's a will, there's a way. And by the way, if you establish the Paul McGann Doctor, even as the interregnum, as I think Cliff was hinting at, if it works, you've got some spin-off specials where that Doctor does an adventure, giving the present Doctor actor a break. You know, there's ways around it. I don't want a Doctor-like story. I just want a Doctor. I don't care what he looks like. It doesn't have to be the present one. I think that's the issue. Why do I, as a fan, want to see a Doctor-like story? I'm not interested. Not interested. I couldn't give a toss whether she has PTSD. I really don't care. You know.
Well, there you are. I think you said it quite well. You know, I mean, you've got plenty of opportunity to do spin-offs instead of this bloody unit Sea Devils thing, which just looks like it's gonna flop harder than a big large floppy thing. It's a waste. You know, why not? You've got a TARDIS, you know, do another Doctor, you know.
Yeah,
why not just make one up?
Well, we're not absent material, right? There's about 30 books. They could really roll Paul McGann into, you know, he did the same thing at Big Finish. So making visual versions of this, I think even if you took that, you got it down to a 52 episode count, be smart about the budget, you probably got 100. You probably got 2 seasons or whatever worth of of show that
Yeah,
you could
because
extend it out and really milk this. I don't want to say milk it because that implies
one
taking
of
advantage of the brand, but it's rife, and that format is not something that's happening now.
because one of my
Returning
favorite
to the old way is the better way, I think.
one of my favorite things as a kid, depends what you're seeing and what age you are, but was seeing Nerva Beacon twice, but it in different time periods. I mean, that was clever with the set and budget. I know they still had to create a few extras, but that was a good idea, and I think you can do that. The Time Ring bought them, saved them on the TARDIS set for a while, I dare say. There's ways round this if you're a clever writer, but I just think there's no need for this big budget. And actually, I was reading an article yesterday. I used it as part of the manifesto, didn't I? And I said that they said that because of these 45-minute episodes and every week the story's over, that's actually more expensive on set design, new actors, and all the rest of it. So basically, RTD's vision is expensive. And actually, we could really cut our cloth accordingly. And not every year you have the same set used twice, but actually even in 2005 they did that with the that Jagrafest thing, didn't they? Because they had the Big Brother studios and then they used it again at the end. Come on.
Well,
this is the way to do it.
What I think as well is that I would describe one word RTD's sort of vision of Doctor Who is bombastic.
Yeah.
It's big, it's brash, it's too bright, it's all garish, really. It's like a gay man's boudoir. It's just too much. It's too it's like you get diabetes just looking at the screen, and I think you just need to kind of rein that excess back in and make it very sleek, make it very almost Victorian, to kind of go to that kind of that gothic horror kind of element to it. Really just make it, a bit of moody lighting, a bit of, wooden panels or whatever,
From my, I've told Brendan this before we got on. When 96 hit, it was literally here in the States. We don't follow Who. I was, on my own. Nobody watched this show except me. And in my immediate area, but and I didn't find out for almost a year and a half that it was even canceled. And so I think I've thought about how this needs, and that where it distills down for me is that the Doctor, whether it's male, female, black, white, doesn't matter, just like Brendan said, there are certain core elements. Then that's what these writer rooms that he's talking about would need to distill down to the basic functioning parts of it. I think as an authoritarian figure, First Doctor, the teachers were what the kids would relate to as authoritarian figures, but here's this strange old man telling them, no, you can't do that. He told everybody no for most of the time, but ends up being the font of wisdom when it comes right down to it. Representational of that authoritarian class, that the people you don't trust, so to speak. But then through that, conveying the new ideas, the new way to look at things, to embrace thought-provoking ideas or science or whatever it is. I think that's the nugget of who the Doctor is. I think anybody.
And I do think, I was saying last night about whether it starts at 8 p.m. Some people were saying to me today 9 p.m. blah blah blah. But weekend. But you want the kids to aspire to be allowed to stay up. It's got to be almost like a dare for them that they watch Doctor Who late on, and that the Doctor is not that cozy creature. He's unpredictable. Sometimes he gets you on edge about where he's going. Kids like that sort of thing. The kids don't want the cozy kind of, oh yeah, he's an easy one. No, they want somebody who's got edge to them nowadays. They really do. Now, just before we move on, and please hold your thoughts, because I'm just trying to get some of the thread in here. If I go bigger here, Mr. Squinty Mint, he's got a theory on all of this. A short reset season A shame they've wasted the episodes on Unit, where the end point is the Doctor starting his travels again with a certain knowledge things will be different this time. I would personally opt for a series of bank holiday specials to get ahead of steam, feature film length or consecutive two-parters, properly paced like a feature film, albeit without a feature film budget. The problem with each series is it can't maintain the viewership of the first episode. And of course, that was one thing. Let's be fair. I mean, I showed you those graphs. It's a downward trajectory all the way. Now, if you hold your thoughts together, lads, I'm just going to push it on as I will do. The TARDIS. Now, I think this landed the best when I just said we need to get back to the tradition of the TARDIS was unreliable. He nicked the bloody thing. He doesn't have the instruction manual. Come on. Now, if we say there's no callbacks and you can't go back to Gallifrey, I don't care if it's destroyed or not. At the moment, just leave it alone because I'm bored with it. And the casual viewer doesn't need any more fanfic. So basically, he can't go back and borrow. He has to just keep going, but sometimes it crash lands. It's a death trap. I think it's a great idea making it darker where a companion dies. It's a death trap. It's that dangerous. So it crashes, it does this, it does that. There's loads of reasons there that gets a writer to get them onto a planet. So Eddie Day says, and it's the second bit now, love the Megan idea, and the idea of a death trap TARDIS is superb, and your justification is justified. Squinty Mint, and I would really ration TARDIS interior scenes. A few people, although they like the idea, they got scared of too many TARDIS interior scenes. I didn't like that much with the 80s. I have to say, you know, I don't want to see Nissa's bedroom. Why? I don't want to see Adric on the bed. Why? You know, can we get the adventure going? And the adventure shouldn't be in the bedroom.
Well, if you look at season 12, you know, you didn't even see the interior of the TARDIS for the whole season. It was only in the Tom's second season that we actually got to see TARDIS console again. So maybe leave the reveal of the TARDIS interior to the last minute. Yeah, I think as well, like you said about him not being able to really go anywhere or turn to anyone for help, he's got to be very resourceful. So maybe he has to sort of land on planets. You know, his justification is, you know, A, it's by accident, or B, he's looking for stuff to fix the TARDIS with. You know, things like that, little quests. And I like what Simon Anthony said earlier. You know, make Doctor Who intellectual again. Well, I think that's in the writing. You know. You need a writer, and I think a producer should not be a writer. I think he should be a producer, and I think that should be very distinctly different. And I think you have writers who have at least a grasp of modern scientific concepts. I'm not saying that you have to go full in hard sci-fi to above people's heads or whatever, but you need to at least a grounding and understanding of certain concepts, because this is where you end up sliding into what we slid into, which is fantasy, because they don't have a clue about anything scientific whatsoever. And I think if you just aim it above your average 10-year-old mind, you know, so it's you know, words, the English language, which is slightly more advanced than they would understand. So kids would go, what's that mean? And they don't know what the hell's going on or what they're talking about, but they want to know.
My favorite bit, Lee, was, I always mention Genesis of the Daleks, but my favorite bit was when Davros said insubordination, and I thought, what the hell is insubordination? It sounds bad. It's like, whoa.
The Doctor Tom Baker dropped that. Terror of the Zygons. Tom Baker drops that line about, you guys are dealing with oil. Once you figure out how to deal with the excitation of hydrogen molecules, then you really got something. I was looking stuff up in encyclopedias, you know, trying to figure out what that would bring us. Yeah, having that seed.
And science fiction is supposed to be quite, it's the clever genre. I mean, let's be honest. If you want pap, you go to Mills and Boon or something. I mean, sorry, science fiction is high level thinking. And I'm sorry, but the kids who get into sci-fi like to be made to think, and Doctor Who shouldn't be then doing kissy, kissy, kissy behind the bike sheds.
Well, kids are far more savvy than ever before, and kids instinctively know when they're being patronized. All right.
I'm watching the show now. My 12-year-old or my 9-year-old will come in and see what's going on, watch for about 2 minutes, and say, "What is this?"
It's
Sounds
dumb.
Wow.
It's
That's
stupid.
stupid.
And
then they'll
kids are
leave the
smarter
room. They don't want to even watch it.
kids are smarter than that. They want to be challenged. I think,
Yeah.
you know, if you just deliver everything on a plate and it's all brightly colored and it's got loud music and lots of visual effects, and then
They
you know
actually
the
tune out from that.
yeah, and have the doctor going, "Oh, honey, babes," they're
Oh,
not down
yeah.
with that. It's
No,
patronizing.
it's
They need
like
engagement constantly. That's
Yeah,
why I think that the
on an
serialized.
intellectual level.
Yeah.
I feel like RTD's that embarrassing uncle you always meet at the wedding, and you're going, he thinks he's down with the
I wouldn't
kids,
want
and
him
you
to be
think,
my uncle.
yeah, and you think, you know, get that tie from around your head. I'm sorry, you're an embarrassment. Now, if anyone's tuned in, we're following up from yesterday's show. I had a manifesto. It's a framework. If you go too detailed, you suffocate creativity. And so we're trying to come up with a rescue plan for Doctor Who. Instead of being fans always getting slagged off for saying cancel, 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 we're doing the opposite. And so we're looking at a rescue plan.
Mayday, mayday, emergency, emergency.
I don't know if it's possible, but we'll try our best. But the other thing is the thread is on fire. You're all Doctor Who fans with a passion. Now, as you know, we do have a switchboard available and they'll man the phones for me. Here we go. I'll just check how things are going. Oh, well, there you go. The Who Pets are manning the switchboard for any shonky chats or anything that's available like that. But there you go. Those were made, the ones with the puppets moving, that's Garbage. Lovely Garbage, who's moderating, did them for us. Thank you
Good
very
lad.
much. Yeah, we need a bit of fun. The Who Pets, they don't like me. I'm a bully boss. It's a Brisbane sweatshop again. We were in the middle of talking about, I think the TARDIS lands as an ID, doesn't it, lads?
Yeah.
I do have a feeling that one thing that I like about the TARDIS and the interior, I think somebody mentioned it, that as a safe space, it's that pause between adventures. But until you establish what the adventures are, I think having it's too dangerous to go in there right now. Something's wrong. That's why they're getting out.
I mean, somebody mentioned last night, they're obviously a creature for the 80s. They loved that moment. You shut the... I did. I have to say, I remember. I love the John Pertwee doors. You know, when the TARDIS kept changing, but they're very thick doors.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when they're shut, you felt safe. You thought,
yeah.
Also, not the same one. That's a detail. Not the same inside as the outside. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah. But you see, that's what I mean. It's an old... I mean, I've got to get my MOT for my car. And we all know an older car... Things go wrong. This TARDIS has been burned, chucked off cliffs. It's been fired at. I mean, come on. It's spun round stars in Creature from the Pit. Away. So basically, and it's towed the Earth as well in Stolen Earth. That must have clapped out the bloody batteries. So basically, I think the wiring's a bit dodgy. Because it's playing with dimensions, you know, this hocus pocus thing that we've all bought into is a lovely dramatic idea. There's fringes and frontiers in the TARDIS where you've got to be bloody careful or you die. Oh, come on. It's a safe space, but you've got to behave. And that might shut the companions up from being all a bit naughty. Because I can't stand a naughty companion.
Oh, they're getting smug and cocky all the time. And when I see the description of the companion, at last, she is an equal to the Doctor. Like, we hear this every bloody companion now. I mean, she's not an equal to the Doctor. No one should be an equal to the Doctor. The Doctor stands alone. He is one of a kind. Even amongst his own species, he's one of a kind. He's a unique...
That's actually the entire point.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
You can't have a companion who gives as good as she gets. And no one cares. Right, you know, keep that nonsense out of it. Focus on the Doctor. The Doctor should be the smartest man in the room, bar none, and only he knows it. It's fine if the companion answers back occasionally or question. You know, I know like the companion in the past, you know, a lot of criticism was, "Oh, what does this do, Doctor? What's that, Doctor?" You know, but that's fundamentally what the role of the companion is, right? It's not a story about them. It can be interesting, but it's got to the point now where it's just turned into soap.
And
and I'm not that interested, I'm not invested.
Did you? I mean, I remember the Visitation. You know,
Mm.
I was excited with the Peter Davison first season, and the Visitation, which I really do like as a
I
story.
like that one.
But there was a moment in it I was getting really perturbed. Nissa's faffing around with a machine to kill the android, of course, but Tegan and Adric were faffing with the TARDIS and managed to make it work. And I thought, no, it's too easy, that. And I remember as a kid, whoa, I was riled up about it. It should be dangerous and it should be very complex, not you press 2 buttons and press delete and something. No. Now, Raymond Williams here says, I prefer the TARDIS as a safe space. And this is where I hit a bit of controversy, because I agree. I know it can't be a complete death trap. I don't mind the TARDIS being faulty and not landing where the Doctor wants it to land, but not dangerous to life. Raymond, you see, I'm the education profession is safe. I'm out of it now.
Well, I think if you add that element of a little bit of risk and danger early on, but then you can kind of move forward, so it's not constantly a threat to everything. If you have that as just a way to engage people to watch and be interested, that's fine. But I think if it maintains itself, then it's just showing the Doctor's inadequate, or he's not taking enough precautions to look after. I mean, if there was a tragedy, that would force him to really sort of knuckle down and get this fixed. But I think if you have it as a constant conceit, then it's
something happens, they go on the adventure, they're heading back to the TARDIS, the companion says it's safe to go back in there. Well, it's safe 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
With a line,
or maybe 7 times out of 10. He doesn't know. It's not necessarily a risk, but it's an element of risk, and that's why I like the idea a lot.
Yeah. So Pete Merritt, the TARDIS needs to be uncontrollable again. I know that moment in Wild Blue Yonder, it might have been neat for you to do a 45-minute story, RTD, but when he landed back and picked up Donna Noble just before she was going to be incinerated, the TARDIS has never done that, apart from City of Death. Of course, there's been 1 or 2 in the past where basically suddenly the TARDIS could land where he wanted it to. But please, most of all, I love that random thing. I love the fact when the Doctor doesn't know where he is, and they're alert, and has to prove his mettle. Are you a stowaway? It just so happens lots of people have died, and you've just arrived. They're classic. I hate this Doctor who just arrives and says, I can feel a loving and all the rest of it. The Doctor doesn't land like some diva on a RuPaul show. The Doctor sneaks in. The Doctor tiptoes in. If you have a loud companion like Tegan, it's like, shut up, you're giving the game away.
What I loved about Tom's performance was when he was sneaking on board anywhere or whatever, and then as soon as he got caught out, he just acted like, well, of course I'm here. I'm meant to be here. What's this doing? What are you up to? And it's people just get so bamboozled by him because he's so overbearing in that moment. Because it's a brilliant way of kind of undermining people in charge and their authority, and it's brilliant.
Well, it's like the second Doctor. You see him in all those bases under siege. He's just appeared. Obviously, people will be going, "What the hell are you doing?" And then he suddenly just goes, "If you do that, and he does a kind of equation, and suddenly they go, "Oh, he knows what he's doing." Whereas the present Doctor just goes, "Oh, you look good in that," to a unit soldier, and you're going, "Oh God,
Penny babes."
Yeah. I mean, you're looking fit. And I'm thinking, no, stop that. Some fellas would deck you for saying that. Back off, mate. Just show you've got a brain, not a blooming thing in your trousers. Stop it.
It goes to my choice for, I like the McGann pause, but in terms of personality, it doesn't actually have to be this person. My idea of the perfect Doctor to take over down the line would be somebody like Richard Iowati.
Okay.
He embodies that acerbic. You don't know where he stands on things. He could be engaged. He could not really care about you. That kind of personality, I think, would be perfect. I don't know if he would want to do that.
I think it'd be quite an interesting choice, but I would worry though that because of his particular tone, that he couldn't pull off gravitas. I mean, I could be wrong. I haven't seen him in anything sort of serious, but
Oh, no.
I do think that if you do cast an actor to play the Doctor, he's got to have the comedy patted down, but also pull off the very, very serious and darker side with gravitas and intellect, like a force of nature, like behind those eyes that you can't mistake for anything other than, geez, this guy really knows something and you've got to be careful. Or someone who can sort of, like, Neville was saying, pretend to be an idiot to disarm people, but people are not quite sure which way he's going to go. And I like that. That's something that I think Tom Baker really sort of personified in the character, and I think that's something that has been somewhat lacking of late.
So we are trying to come up with a rescue plan. We've talked about the TARDIS, the format. I've got this interregnum Doctor, so the Doctor Who is always on the TV, folks, rather than people start to forget, media executives start to forget. So that was the plan. And the writers' rooms are establishing the character of the Doctor to make sure any misdirections, like actually the Doctor Who movie Doctor, where basically he's half human, is erased, whatever they decide. And then the other version is they map out the Whoniverse. I know I hate the phrase, but you get what I'm saying. Where is Draconia, Sontar, the Cybermen, just the main protagonists, so that we actually have a rules of engagement for every writer. And yes, you're going to have some dodgy areas where you can go in down a time tunnel or something. There's something. I just think it's a 62-year-old program, and you have to respect that. You can't just make up all this crap every few years and just say, oh, by the way, we've changed it again. No, the fans do actually like a bit of clarity. I don't want to serve them, but I think it's good to have a kind of just a general map of where everything goes, because it starts to get a bit silly when you talk about millions of Sontarans, Cybermen are out there, Daleks are reigning supreme, and then Flux destroys the whole bloody thing. I mean, can we just establish a few things? And you have to say, as a kid, I loved Frontier in Space. The idea of Draconia there, Earth here, and the Master tampering. If we just have a few kind of rules there, if I was a new writer into Doctor Who's writing room, I might be able to land and sit there and not talk about sexual stuff in a Eurovision special. And that's partly what I want. So we're discussing this, folks, about the writers' rooms and how to go forward. We've discussed the TARDIS, the Doctor. I'm sure we'll say more about the Doctor as we go, but we are plodding on.
Oh, and can I just add to that? And also, where they are in space is one thing, but also where they are in time. And this was a problem, I think, that the Cybermen had in the 80s, was it was such a convoluted mess of story. I was talking again to Jack about how the 60s Cybermen had kind of a continuous story arc, and then it kind of dissipated. So if you're traveling through time and space and you come across the very same Cybermen, for example, and they haven't altered or changed, are they time travelers as well, or are they unevolved or whatever? Or do you introduce another type of Cyberman, an older one or a newer one?
Yeah,
that kind of really needs to be thought out. And I would also add that, for all the problems that it can cause, having an expert on lore and canon on hand, taking advice, not necessarily acting on everything they say, but having someone who does actually know, like they did in the 80s with Ian. And doesn't necessarily have to be 100% all the time.
No, I mean that's what I mean. I don't want them suffocated. But this is where, instead of us worrying about Juno Dawson and Inara Elms and these brand new writers to Doctor Who, and you wonder what the agenda is, if you have a writers' room, and those two writers' rooms will turn into one enormous writing room, where basically they've spent a year and a half discussing Doctor Who the program and Doctor Who lore, and now they're writing stories. And you, as the producer and the script editor, will pick the best ones to make a season, or whatever we're going to call it. And of course, the thing is, you'll have some older sci-fi writers or very experienced ones. You'll always be able to bring in new blood, because that's always important with legacy. And so you've got a kind of a buzz there that can really work, whether producers come and go or not. Now,
And
just
tender it out, you know, get
Yeah.
the best scripts in and make it cohesive, you know, make it work within that
now,
season.
just before Cliff comes in.
Talking about in general.
Sorry, Cliff.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry,
I think what you're talking about is the general canon.
Yeah, I was just. I'll come straight back to you, but the puppets have just told me in the switchboard. Hold on. They're celebrating because we've just had from Farsight, we've just had a super chat. So, oh, bless them. They can buy some new shoes now or something. So, Anwar Bernard should be the next doctor. Yeah, I can never say.
Well, when I was on Twitter, you know, I was cheerleading for Anarin Barnard, and there's a great picture of him with large curly hair, and he's got this Edwardian sort of coat on, and he's got this kind of walking stick in front of his face, hiding sort of one eye, and it looked so doctory to me, and I was like, ugh. I mean, looking like the Doctor is one thing, but you know, having the chops to do it is another. I mean, as a younger sort of almost McGann-like, while I could see that happening.
Yeah. Now, Cliff, I know you wanted to come in, but the next bit is going to be you anyway, because everybody, this is one thing I banned last night's show from, but Cliff, you know, he's doing his own thing. Basically, I said that Paul McGann's a doctor, and then the last episode of the Paul McGann era, it's a multi-doctor story, and you see this brand new doctor. He's already regenerated. We don't get a number. We just get on with it. Now, once that starts, I mean, it's like, well, what? And I just wanted to move forward. I kept saying, go forward, no callbacks. Well, of course, Cliff only half listened to me. And so did a lot of people who wrote to me last night and today. And they said, what about the Timeless Children? What about Flux? What about this? And you seem so troubled that I already will do a section then that even though we're trying to go forward, we're going to try and deal with the past. So let's do a little section here. And Cliff, your ideas are here. So I'll just get them up. So I'll go big screen. If you want to start talking through some of them now, Cliff, but there you go. Cliff has mentioned dealing with the Timeless Children, the gods of whatever it is, the bi-generation, and the Toymaker trap. So off you go, Cliff.
Basically, each one of these points kind of goes to what I was going to say before, is this, in the writing rooms, whatever they are called, with the Centaurans, the Cybermen, everything, I don't know that a map is necessarily needed, but the rules for how each of these is used. That was the problem with the Timeless Children, is it wrecked what we already knew. It broke too many rules, broke too much. And this is a 60-year-old show, so canon is pretty fluid. It's changed so many times, even in the best of the stories. But
mostly by accident, and
mostly by accident, because they really weren't. They were trying to write the best story for the moment,
and it wasn't VHS at the time.
Right, there's no backtracking to go and research the old episodes. They're just trying to write what's going to work on TV right now. I think that approach works, but now we've got all this nonsense, this baggage. The Timeless Children, just write it off that the Master lied about everything, and it actually is feasible. It actually works. It was always from his point of view. We don't have any proof that it actually occurred. Write it off as a lie.
I'll let you carry on. Don't worry, Cliff. As you go through this, right? Like I know you're going to hit the Jodie regeneration stuff. Some people would say if you're trying to kind of launch the series properly, fresh, and get casual viewers, do you think there's a way? I mean, the casual viewer won't be bothered about this. So is it worth us trying to keep the fans happy doing these bits?
Well, I'll couch it in the same. This is down that timeline. So what you've suggested as what I would call is the first stealth spinoff, right? Is the Paul McGann stepping into the role? Hey, we've got a new show. It's the Doctor, but you don't know him. He's an old Doctor, but he looks new. Whatever. You couch it as just a new spinoff show while you're doing all of the thinking in the writing room, getting the maps, getting the canon reestablished, finding out the rules for the roadmap going forward past that. and let that take the space in the interim. If people like it, that's even better. We can do more episodes with McGann. I would delay that crossing the path with a doctor until you've established everything as the rules, and within those rules, figure out how to undo all this, or not necessarily undo it, but come up with the rules for it. Why did it happen? Could it be undone? Is it going to happen again? How can we make this so that it stays consistent with everything that's happened before? Because a lot of these things alienated too much of our fan base, and we lost too many viewers in the process.
Well, we're gonna touch on the Jodie regeneration in a minute, but we've just had I've had another bit of feedback. Hold on. Yeah, bless them. I mean, here we go, Paul. Here we go. Super chat. They need an open. It's not called a super chat, Paul, on this channel. It's called a shonky chat. They need an open script policy where fans can send in scripts. Get rid of RTD and allow contributions from the fans and proper sci-fi writers. You see, my version of that, Paul, was to actually have the writing room where basically over time, some will get their own show like Toby Whitehouse. You know, they will if you're successful. You're not going to stay there in a writer's room, are you? You're going to start your own show. So there's always going to be new blood, old blood. People keep custodians of the show in a way, because producers will come and go as well.
But isn't it funny though how, you know, RTD and all that talk up a good game about mentoring new talent, but it's always only if they agree with his politics. And I think if you just sent in blind scripts, if they were good on their own merits, then you go, well, this has got something, we can work with that, you're hired, and we'll mentor you from there, rather than, oh, we're going to handpick people because of their, you know, racial characteristics or sexual characteristics or whatever, that they have, you know, this inflated opportunity. And I think it should just be, it doesn't matter what any of that is, whatever your immutable characteristics are. If you're a talented writer, you should be mentored just based on the scripts alone.
Here's Lucky Day, even better. The Doctor and Ruby arrive. They meet this guy. There's the Reeks. They're the monsters that cause fear, that makes you afraid of them, and they have to figure out how to defeat that.
Yeah, that's a bit too advanced for
you know what I'm saying. What I suspect is that was the kernel of the story that was brought to Russell, and he changed it into this, you know, response.
Yeah. I think the character of Conrad in that was an RTD creation, because in the finale apparently he's supposed to be coming back. So I think he was the one who said to McTeague, it's got to be like this. He's got to behave like that.
Davies does that all the time. That's
exactly. He's a control freak.
Pat himself on the back for all
absolutely.
His
So what about your? I mean, you Timeless Children can be written out. Jodie's regeneration, you said, was a result of the toy maker breaking into our dimension.
Yes. I didn't mind Jodie. What I had a problem with was that she was not told to do the research. Every good actor is going to research the role that they're in. I've seen her in other things. I just watched the episode of well, what is it? It's another sci-fi anthology. She's a decent actor. Okay, but somehow she just seemed to regenerate, fell out of the TARDIS. We don't know why.
No.
My idea would be
landed through a metal train ceiling without turning into spaghetti. Carry on.
Exactly, without regenerating again. But my idea is that was the moment that the toy maker was looking for some way to get in and busted through. I'm not going to even try to explain it. That created an anomaly in the whole of our reality. That leads down the road to the split. It's suddenly becoming 10 again or 14, whatever we call him. We don't know. That's not consistent either. There's a sense of everything being rewritten from the moment she regenerates, and it slowly gets worse and worse and worse until we're where we are now with all the fourth wall breaking. I believe that's probably the route they're going with Mrs. Flood. I'm not going to speculate, but I think it's going to be that something is out there rewriting facts, rewriting the presentation. I mean, even when the Doctor remembered in the well, remember he remembers, oh my gosh, this is the planet Midnight. Suddenly there was just a big splash of David Tennant on the screen. like you've turned to that splash page in a magazine. It was ridiculous, right? But I think that could easily be explained away as all the nonsense way that everything's written. Explain it as somebody mucking about with time, and and reality, and they've changed things to be so that bi-generations exist. What is this? You defeat the bad guy, all of that goes away.
Yeah. So Lee, where do you? I mean, I think all fans really are. You know, we've got problems with bi-generation, Sledgehammer TARDIS, maybe the Jodie Whittaker, all that stuff, Flux. But how much merit is there in those? I know Cliff said don't do it straight away, but we do need to address it, and I agree with that. But which are the one? Go on, you go.
Simple fact of the matter is, it was terrible. I mean, really terrible. Not only terrible, but canon destroying terrible. And I think it should only be treated with what it deserves, and that's utter contempt. So I would just completely never refer to it ever again.
Like the half-human Doctor.
Look, that's done and dusted. No one new to the show. Let's say the show goes on hiatus. 10 years later, it comes back again with Paul McGann, for example. Okay, who's gonna remember whether he's half human or not from that one TV movie he did? No one cares. We've all dealt with that already. Anyone who was there at the time have gone, well, yeah, well, that's never really.
I have far more issues with snogging everybody.
Yeah.
And that's
trying to get off with everybody,
Yeah, well, that's partly where I was coming from with everything. I mean, I do find it problematic, and I did at the time. But as you keep moving forward, I keep thinking, as it goes further, Cliff, as it goes years and years and years, yes, Timeless Children happened, or did it?
Well, I just want to pull up Parsons' comment now. I just wanted to address it. So canon becomes that a woman and a black man screwed everything up. Oh, come on. Well, there you are. Who's responsible for that? White men. They wrote them and they screwed them up and they did them dirty. They shouldn't have been cast in the first place, but again, it was because of the push. And they did them terrible stories. Whose fault is that? It's not anyone's fault.
When I've had Sonny Waffles on, and I know he doesn't represent every black man on the universe, he's just himself, and that's how we all operate. But when I've asked him, particularly on this area, that if Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor fails, and whatever, as Lee's saying, Wayne, it's the writing. I'm going to blame the writing first, because if it's the first black Doctor and it's the first female Doctor, you need to be on the money. You need this to work.
Yeah.
And not and Sonny Waffles was saying this, objectifying a black man into this gay diva is not the way to sell it.
It was worse than that. It was fetishizing him. And you can prove that by Rogue. Rogue was two women writing two gay men kissing because that's what got them off effectively. And for that to be allowed to go on and out like that for what is ostensibly a family show is really misreading the room and not understanding the character at all. And
Jodie wasn't the Doctor because she didn't research to find out who the Doctor was and how she should.
And it showed.
Ncudi's not the Doctor because he's playing himself.
Her only point of reference was Tennant. Clearly, and she seemed to tackle the role as, oh, this is a silly little kids show that I'm in, so I'm going to talk like a mum, talking down to a 5-year-old kid. That's what it came across to me, and also the sneering smugness as well did not help. That you could argue was in the writing, but I mean, from all the interviews, look, come on, we all know her attitude. She came into this immediately on the offensive, and sort of, laying down the law. You're afraid of my gender. All this stuff did not help at all in any way. And the same with Ncuti Gatwa.
Exactly. When you invest in the character, you know where to push back on in the script.
Exactly.
You say, I don't think I would say that. I don't think I would do that. You become the character.
It's combative. Yeah.
So what I would say is trying to save a TV program, and knowing, having been a Dallas fan in the 80s, you do not cancel any era once it's been done. I don't think it serves any purposes. So Stephen Bellow, when you say no one will ever undo the first female or black Doctor, I'm not as Lee was really saying, we just keep moving forward.
I go one step
No.
further. I decanonize the entirety of New Who. Not decanonize it in a way that it never happened, but I'm saying it happened in a different reality or a different universe, whatever. Just pocket it away, never refer to it. You could if you
Why
want
did
to
it?
down the line. But
right.
write it out.
That's even my approach, is that the toy maker's done something, or whatever. It could be, I'm coming up with it as a toy maker. That's my headcanon, fanfic, whatever you want to call it, after all this stuff. But there has to be a reason why. If you've got 50-something years and it's always been a white male, why was it suddenly a white female? Why is it now a black doctor after a bi-generation?
Yeah, you can.
I'm not saying even put it on screen. I'm saying in the writing room, figure out why. So because somebody's going to want to do it again.
I think it could be. I think it can be explained in, yes, like the Time War line. For example, why was the Sixth Doctor strangling Perry when all the other doctors have been all right? I know we call it the crisis, you know, but you can write it away that establishes it may not happen again, so to speak. Now, we've been talking about the past.
I would also add to that as well. During the 80s, it clearly became very much trying to please the fans, which alienated the general audience. So you've got to be careful not to go down that same road. And I think that's exactly the same problem that Rtd's done by saying, oh, well, we're moving things forward, but then keeps bringing everything back and then changing that, pissing everyone off altogether, which is, you know.
So basically, in essence, because we want to move forward with the program, there were lots of other ideas you had about let's get rid of the timey-wimey and certain phrases that sound so babyish and simple. You know, and there's me going on about genocide and insubordination in Genesis of the Daleks. And there's us saying timey-wimey. Do you know, when I was a kid, Blinovitch limitation effect was timey-wimey. And come on, let's raise the stakes. As
exactly,
I said,
no science. At least have an understanding of scientific concept or words, or have a scientific advisor on hand that you can run things past and go, okay, so what does this mean? And you know, is there a word that we can use to explain, rather than go timey-wimey and all that nonsense?
Yeah. So basically,
talking down to in that episode, it's talking down to the person as if they can't possibly understand.
Well, talking down to the companion is talking down to the audience.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Yeah.
Same thing.
Okay. So let's talk about the future. This is what it's all about. We're the cancellors, you know, they slag us off. Everybody trolls us. We are the evil dinosaur Doctor Who fans. So let's show yeah. So how could we save this program? So here we go. Now, Cliff, you've got a few ideas. I'll save you for a second. But Side Quest Nerd here, he's in the thread there. We meet the Doctor and Susan on planet Earth in 63. His ship is a police box in a junkyard, of course, and Susan goes to a nearby. Now, I think, and Side Quest Nerd, you can tell me, you're saying the future is what, a full reboot, but using a similar story. I'll keep going and you can tell us. She feels outcast by the other classmates, unearthly child, but has one friend in Barbara who hands out together. The Doctor warns Susan to never change history. Armoured guards appear late after a time disturbance caused by Susan and commanded by the leader of them they call the Master. They seek out the Doctor because they want Susan, as she holds the key to something the Time Lords want. The Doctor races to get Susan and himself out of that time period, but not before Susan's friend Barbara accidentally gets on board, blah, blah, blah. The Master is hell-bent on the Doctor's destruction and the capture of Susan. Nothing will get in his way, which becomes his downfall in itself at the end of season 2 when he all goes full rogue. Now, I love it when fans go full on. but right, so the future's the past is my issue here, lads. Yes or no?
No.
Oh.
Well, I
sorry,
the caveat that I mean, you can't revisit. You can't change history, not one line. That should be the definitive tenet of the show, the web of time. These are things in my list, things that define the functionality of how we're going to tell stories, and I think revisiting that moment might be great. You see Susan and that the adventure is we've got to make them all get in the TARDIS and leave, you know, without talking to them, without doing anything, because we have to preserve history. That could be an interesting story to tell. But otherwise, you you can't. I'm not in for a full reboot because I think there's too much investment in the history.
Yeah.
They're doing that with stuff now, and it's even the same thing of my kids have always been huge fans growing up of the How to Train Your Dragon animated flicks, and I'm dubious of this new live action one coming out because what it does is it effectively erases or back shelves the animated that started it all. We don't want to do that to decades.
Well, just before I bring Lee in, John Yulden, I don't agree with the reboot. You see, this is it, that reboot is a kind of cancellation of everything that's gone before. It's Bobby Ewing coming out the shower. I think it's dangerous. It can really tank the program by doing that. But just like James Bond, I mean, people are saying you don't number the James Bonds. Well, it's because they're supposed to be the same character. But with the Doctor unique franchise, I think if we have numberless Doctors going forward, the issue disappears. And so basically, it's not a reboot. You just keep going. If say it goes off the air for a few years, a new production team, it comes back. We don't say this is Doctor number 16 and one day we'll show Regeneration with Shooty. No, just get on with it. I'm sick of Regeneration anyway. There's Tinkerbell fairy dust. So just coming to you, Lee. John Yulden doesn't like the reboot idea. Neither do I. I don't want RTD to forever know they destroyed the continuity. Over to you, Lee.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you think it's divisive now, that would be pretty much, that would immediately, automatically divide fandom to the point where half, if not more, will just go, no, I'm not giving that time. So immediately you've already caused a problem with your rating straight out the gate without even doing anything. Just an announcement would do it. And people won't want to give that the time of day. It's sad. It could be a good idea, but I just think it would be far too divisive. And I think as well, if you stray into doing a reboot like that, like a proper reboot, as opposed to the 2005 reboot, it runs the risk of going down that territory of becoming reimagined, and that would be quite tricky. And I think it would be undermining and undoing the reverence I think we have for William Hartnell and Verity Lambert and all that. Look, I think in the future, AI is going to be a thing where you'll be able to plug in, your favorite William Hartnell episodes and do whatever you want with them. You can recast them or colorize them or make them widescreen or 8K or whatever. And that will be done at the push of a button. So you'll be able to do that yourself anyway, I should imagine. But I would say avoid that because you'll run the risk of alienating straight away.
Well, SideQuest Nerd has answered my question. I put his theory up. Who is the Doctor? Who is Susan? Is my idea. Susan is also the Doctor's daughter, but only a couple of years old. Thanks for answering that. Wayne Parsons has got a question.
It's a good idea. But
yeah. I mean, I think what's important is you don't suffocate and say no to stuff in the writer's room. We just, you work it through. Wayne Parsons, question to you both. Do we really think the timeline has been altered so gravity is mavity? Is that a real in-universe alteration moving forward? Wayne Parsons, my theory is if he's gone along that crap for 2 years, my hope is, you can't erase it, but it was an alternative and it wasn't completely...
Do you know...
That's one of the Toymaker ripples that I'm talking about that we can write it off as.
Well, my theory is, and I'm sticking to it. I think what this is during the reality war, it's going to be a battle between the reality of the world we live in today and the reality of the world that people like Russell T Davies want to usher in, and that they will win. And that's what it's going to be about. It's going to be a whole political allegory. The whole Mavity thing will be about rewriting history so it's much more diverse. So therefore, you have a South Asian Sir Isaac Newton and all these things, and Davros has got legs that function. He's not scarred. So it's all about rewriting history to make it more inclusive and a better reality than the one that we currently live in. And I swear I'm going to nail my mast through the wall that that's what's going to happen.
Well,
Prove me
we've got
wrong.
so we had that, and one way. So yes, Cliff, you were talking about that. Let me just sum it up for people, and then you can come in. So future Doctor Who, you've mentioned Gallifrey, Eye of Harmony, The Matrix, and Time Lords. I'm not dissing it, as you know, it's going to have to be a long-term thing. Web of Time is immutable, and the core of all time travel and action. We need to the Doctor to stop being this. They've only made this up. I know people say space Jesus, but you know this nonsense that he's a time event and all this crap. I hated that New Who moment. It was a great moment, but I hated it at the same time because it was changing things. The girl was looking through the attic roof, the dormer window, and the Dalek was there. And she was the young Lindsay Duncan from Waters of Mars. And so when that Dalek saw her through the window, he knew she was a time event and he wouldn't exterminate her. Bollocks! Absolute bollocks! How the hell does since when does a Dalek willy-nilly exterminate people, but then suddenly have a conscience and go, oh, I can't affect a time event? Meanwhile, their boss, Davros, is trying to make the reality bomb. Please, consistency. It was a great dramatic moment, but a load of crap.
It makes me even furious in a lot of ways, because if the time event is Rosa Parks doesn't want to get up off the seat, it completely takes the importance of the agency of that person in history away.
Yes,
it's a time event, so she didn't have any choice. What? That's not the point of these moments in time. They're important. If you take that away and make it just some sort function tool of narrative, it really ticks me off. It really.
I mean, Lee, this whole thing about the time event stuff and historical figures, I think New Who has got too cheeky regarding this. And Rosa Parks is an example, or Elizabeth I. Didn't classic Who mostly not show the actual figure, but we got close to them? You never actually. I mean, I suppose you saw Nero in the Roman.
H.G. Wells. You had H.G. Wells in that, yeah, and Time Lash. Time Lash. Yeah, I do agree. It's more of a sort of passing reference, the Doctor does love to name drop, doesn't he? And I like that, a bit of a nod and a wink, and how he influenced all these great thinkers or whatever.
He was in the bushes with Houdini.
Oh, we had Einstein in Time and the Rani and all those, didn't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the only one he crossed paths with was H.G. Wells.
Yeah, but he would have been a great companion, and that would have been fun. But I think, yeah, it's a bit too on the nose. These people are long gone, so you don't really have their sort of, they don't have any sort of right to their own image, do they, or their own personalities or whatever they used to be, which is, fine because they're historical characters, I guess. But the closer to modern days that you get, I think it's possibly a bit.
Would you say, Lee, would you say, as this writer's room for the future, that we actually lay down a rule? I'm trying not to suffocate, but one of the rules when you deal with history with Doctor Who is we've got the Isaac Newton problem where he was Asian in Wild Blue Yonder. And I think this is the danger, and everybody's worried about Doctor Who going forward with any production team regarding what they want to do with, representation and stuff. I think if you're dealing with a real historical figure, you can't faff for any reason at all. And therefore, it's best if the Doctor is in the Tudor court but doesn't meet Elizabeth I. That sort of thing. Where do you stand on that? Because I think I need a rule that we don't meet them.
Peripheral characters, maybe, but I think it's better to kind of deal with the people that you don't know about in history. They're much more interesting, I think. If you look at the Visitation or something like that, it's much more about characters in the real world at that time.
Sorry.
No. Go ahead.
Well, also, if you're dealing with the web of time, you don't want to get close because
because you're affecting history.
You're affecting history. So if you get too near Winston Churchill, he might miss a meeting.
I mean, I quite like what Gareth Roberts did with what was it? what's her name again?
Agatha
Christie. Yeah, sorry. Because it took a slice out of her life where no one knows what happened. That I'm fine with. Accidentally causing the Great Fire of London, you know, I like that, things like that. But it's sort of consequences of the Doctor's actions, or, you know, stumbling on these things and becoming part of that time, and becoming part of that fixed point in time. And so no matter what he does, it can't affect it. But I think he can't enter into it knowing at first. I think he has to just go, well, we're here, we're part of it, you know. And
that's really what that bullet point list is these things need to be established with rules, so that not so that they can't be undone, but so that we know how they operate in the long term. This
rules like this help with verisimilitude. Okay, it makes it believable. You've got a consistent world in which to paint in. You know, it's
my thesaurus. You was sort of verisimilitude.
Yeah, and I think it's very, very. It's very good to have a word like that, because, you know, the Doctor would say words like that, and kids, like, when you're like 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever, would go, what does that mean? And then you'd look it up. Exactly. But it does add to believability if you've got laws, if you not law necessarily, but laws, the laws of what the physics are, you know, how things work in that universe.
Because Lee, it stops. You made the example of Rogue, that you had these 2 female writers who'd never written for Doctor Who before, and since and because they hadn't clearly been given too much kind of guidance, or they were given too much freedom, we had chaos ensuing. And what you've got on screen now, which Cliff summarized everything I was saying really yesterday, just for anybody new to this. We're going forward with how Doctor Who should be. You can see for tone, dark, unpredictable, low budget, rather than all the silly digital effects, adventure, jeopardy, danger, genre, multi-part stories with cliffhangers, no soap opera, blah, blah, blah. Style, behind the sofa again, simpler sets, claustrophobic, no orchestra music, use real science, be out there. I'm saying stick with the Doctor Who theme tune because of course you should. However, Delia Derbyshire took Ron Grainers and did something amazing. Surely we can do that again.
I like someone's suggestion in the, I've forgotten who it was now. Was it Lee? He said get someone like Aphex Twin or something, you know, some real avant-garde electronic musician in, like, someone who knows their stuff, who's done countless of scores, you know, with, you know, because they're very prolific, and, you know, it's never necessarily attributed to their name because they go under so many monikers. But someone like that, or someone on, you know, from the Reflex label or the Mute Records label, or some
and that's what you need. Now I've got my earpiece is telling me something. Hold on, folks. Sorry. Get working harder, you Who pets. Now, as it is, Weiss Roder, James, if I can find you just there, thank you very much. I mean, by the way, while I'm joking about this, I'm still very appreciative. Thank you. Either way, a new Doctor and companion. I stand by my assertion of Danny John Jules for Doctor Who and Jenny Ortega as Romana III. There you go. That's quite precise and on the money, James. And also consistent, because you have said that on our Bigenerates, haven't you, over time. I mean, we've all got favourites for actors and all the rest of it. I just want to make sure whether Jenna Ortega is Romana III, the 5th, the 10th, or whatever. I really don't want a companion arc. I really don't want any more companion-centric stories apart from when they join and when they leave. End of.
I'm tired of seeing who is this companion's grandmother going to be?
Or foster parent, or I mean, that scene when you had the foster parent with the natural mother who dumped Ruby on Christmas Eve for dead. I mean, let's just get this right. It wasn't exactly she might have been troubled, but I can't see the foster mother going, oh, I'll love you. Do you want a cup of tea? And we'll all sit there together. Blended families are one thing, but I'm not in the Disney world. Sorry.
I don't want Danny John Jules as the Doctor for one particular reason. I came across him on October the 7th, let's say, in 2023, and he was quite vociferous about certain things. So I don't like him. I'm sorry. No.
Okay. What about Wayne Parsons? I mean, the rumors and rumors and rumors. There's so many rumors about this season, which are in a way you want rid of, because I don't want Omega back. I don't want Susan back. I don't want Fugitive Doctor. I don't want all these things. Anyway, Wayne Parsons, what do you make of the rumors? Jodie's return in this series. My guess it will be a flashback, a nightmare. I don't. What this is the fan fiction problem, Wayne. This is the problem. I look, we can agree and disagree as fans in a pub, and that's what I want the sense for you to be. But we've got to go beyond the room, and we've got to keep thinking of those casual viewers who are going, is it worth watching? And who the hell's this? And why are they back? And I don't understand it. As soon as you start, science fiction has to be careful, because most people, they're not that interested. It's too nerdy. So you have to make sure it's accessible and doesn't start doing fan fiction. If you've got Gallifrey in it, don't start coming up with loads of rules. Remember, Deadly Assassin and all our favorites, they were on at tea time after Grandstand, and I'll be honest with you, were they getting 27 million? No. We used to be a niche program. Because it's now wanting to get 5 to 10 million, it suddenly wants to be this diminished, devalued, beige program, which anybody can get.
It's very homogenized, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's become, by chasing the American audience, it's betrayed what the American audience liked it for in the first place, which was that is a British pokey little show, and then you make it all big and grand and Americanized, and it's like, well, the Americans are not looking for that. They got plenty of that already.
As the American, I would
speaking
say
over you,
that's
speaking for
absolutely not why I liked it. I liked it because it was telling me stories that I didn't have here. We didn't have this. The closest thing was Star Trek, right? It was teaching you lessons, telling you through a certain lens, and going in a serial format. And it was a new way to get those kind of experiences.
I've got a question for Lee, but first of all, it's all happening. But Lee, obviously, you are musical. You have a musical vent. Paul Thomas Ashworth, Curse of Fenric shows how music should be done. Now, for every kind of moment when we had the radiophonic workshop doing the Sea Devils, and you could say it was experimental. Some love it, some hate it. But I think that's important. Or that whatever the sound of that instrument is in the Silurians, when they appear, and it sounds like some voodoo.
It's a medieval, medieval instrument.
Yeah. I mean, you buy into what Paul's saying here about going forward and how we should do the music and incidental music?
Well, like I say, I think you need an avant-garde electronic composer and let them score it. I think that will be. I mean, like they tried to go the electronic route with Sega Nakanola. I liked his music, but I thought it was more like your CSI. It was not Doctor Who. It wasn't very noticeable. But sometimes, as well with music, you run the risk of it being either too bombastic with the orchestral stuff, or it's sort of jarring, or it's overly present, or it's too loud, it's too quiet. I mean, really, the essence of scoring for TV and film is that you really shouldn't notice it too much anyway. But with Doctor Who, it's always had that kind of jarring, kind of alien quality to it, in the classic series, which I liked. I mean, sometimes it was again a bit overbearing or a bit too crazy and bizarre, but that kind of added to its quirkiness. But I don't think you could sort of go back to early Pertwee with all that kind of the bashing a synthesizer because it was new, but I do, I still love all that stuff. But I would say that you need someone to have a like Richard D. James, Aphex Twin, or someone like that to come along, or someone of that ilk who can really put across that alien quality again, and the darkness. You know,
I mean, there is an element. Dudley Simpson obviously was consistent all the way through, and we all
not
know.
a fan of it. Not a fan of McCulloch. I'm sorry.
No, and this is.
I hated the background music for Sylvester's Run. It drove nuts. I'm sorry.
It made me think I was in some sort of dodgy supermarket. Sometimes
it sounds like MIDI. You know, like you get music and it's just the notes and you just get the tone. It kind of reminded me. I didn't mind the theme tune so much. I quite liked
that. Was the first time during the 7th when there started to be incidental themes within the story. This villain is going to have their entry theme or whatever, and it's not the way it should work.
Time and Rani had a really nice piece of music. It was quite Eastern sounding. I because I had the cassette of the theme and the music, the incidental music from season 20. What was it? Season 24. And it had that on there, and not being I bought it because I wanted the theme tunes, but I had to sit through and listen to a lot of McCulloch's other stuff. Just wasn't a fan, but I did like that one piece. I thought that was quite unusual, and it was all done with sort of voices put through a keyboard.
Now, how do you think we should go forward, whatever the story, regarding the other thing? Because we get all the fans, a lot of fans, even new Who fans who have read about the 70s so long ago, and that actually, you had lots of political stories. So how can you lot be moaning about preaching and lecturing and all that stuff? And the Standard joined in just yesterday saying Doctor Who needs to stop lecturing us. Its morality policing is getting hard to swallow.
The blood in the water.
Yep. The show is veering off course in its desire to thumb its nose to its critics. Right. Well, basically, they're describing RTD, aren't they? Doctor Who decided to take a break from telling a story to offer up a moral lesson on the state of humanity. Now, science fiction should do that. It depends how it does it. That's the problem. And then a couple of examples here, and then I'll bring in the lads on any examples they've got from the history of Doctor Who or now. It's up to them. But shoehorning in the last 5 minutes, we all know it, in Lucky Day just last week, Doctor lecturing its villain Conrad on the myriad evils of those peddling fake news on the internet, weaponizing lies, as
projection.
Yep, Yawn. Is it just me, or is Who serving us rather a lot of these quasi lectures these days? Anyway, you might want to come in on this one.
Yeah,
I got too much to say.
Yeah, exactly.
Simply invoking think tank while still saying that he thought it was all bullshit was just made no sense at all. You have, on one hand, you have an organization that almost caused global thermonuclear war in reality, that he then took the name from for his podcast.
For me,
very exhausting.
It was exhausting. It gave me a headache for 24 hours. I mean, that's how bad I reacted to this. And the simple fact of the matter is, this is like the 3rd episode out of 4 to make the villain the straight white male who starts off as, he seems nice. Oh wait, he's an evil, toxic piece of crap. And it's become such a trope. It's so boring, and it's also incredibly irresponsible when you look at the statistics for young men and morbid mental health issues, and the word I can't say on YouTube is very high amongst that demographic. And here we see this irresponsible idiot running the show using a cudgel to reinforce that message that you are a bad, toxic man. You're an evil because of you think differently to us, and it's all projection. It's like just saying all white men are evil because great white men are evil because they're all right wing, and it's like, what? How is that not racist or whateverist? I mean, it's one rule for them, one rule for everyone else. And it's sick. It's sick. It's
Well, it's like I showed you at the beginning. I mean, this is the political nature of the showrunner now. We meet in cellars at night, we talk, we plot, we sing, we paint, we manifest ideas, we go on marches, we do signatures, we attack, we talk to politicians, we organize ourselves. In the end, what we do is educate. We take everything we know and we go out there and educate. The only
and
thing
that's why I'm totally sick of the sight of you, because all you do is sanctimoniously lecture and look down on people constantly, and you keep telling yourselves that you're on the right side of history, and you're meeting all these. No one cares. We think you're ludicrous. We think you're stupid. You think we're stupid, and this is the impasse, okay? And the point is, no one cares what you think, Russell.
And just as Cliff comes in, sorry, and just as you come in, sorry, Cliff, I know, just as you come in, the word educate, the verb educate is the wrong one. You're supposed to be entertaining.
Indoctrinate. It's indoctrinate, not educate.
But he's getting it all wrong. If he wants to do a heavy political message, then he needs to go into politics and see if there's any votes behind his name. But the other thing is, he's got to be aware that he's doing entertainment and story writing, and a clever sci-fi writer can still imbue some political messaging into a subplot or a character.
Well, he's not a science fiction writer, and he's never been a science fiction writer.
Never has been.
Ever.
No.
He's a soap opera writer. He is a political writer, and frankly, I think he was the worst possible choice to bring Doctor Who back. Yes, it was a success, but I put that down to the brand and the casting rather than his writing. Some of the writers he did bring on were good, and never to be seen again. But I will just say, Russell, if you're listening, mate, shut your trap. We all think you're a ludicrous pantomime villain at this point, like you've written Conrad, or your mate has written Conrad to be. It's sheer projection. Every word that came out Ncuti Gatwa's mouth in that episode at the end was clearly you and Pete McTeague having it out and telling us to obey you, listen only to you, listen to the BBC and no one else. Do not question the government. Do not have opinions of your own. Conform.
But Lee, this is the danger of this educate speech he's just done then, and linking with the point you just make. The issue is you're not educating, because when you shout at people,
who is he to educate anyone? The man's a buffoon.
Yeah, but when he talks at people, shouts at people via a script, the point is you create a backlash. You create a reaction that's negative, rather than a clever politician, a clever advocate tries to find the middle ground and win people over. That speech at the end in the TARDIS will have won not one vote or one person to your cause. In fact, I think it probably created a lot of sympathy for Conrad.
Well, if you are right, you don't have to convince people that you are.
Yeah. Malcolm, let's be honest.
The entire thing of trying to reach out and manipulate, and if we get it right, we'll twist them and change their minds. I just see swastika at the end of that line of dialogue. It's very
Malcolm
spooky.
Hulke. Yeah, Malcolm Hulke kept it open, that you don't have an absolute evil figure. And by the way, as I've said in countless streams this week, what is the main crime of Conrad? Because we have fought. Think of invoking the Colin Baker speech in Trial of a Time Lord. I've fought Cybermen, and in the end, the most evil person he's come across, because he'd like to see him die when he's 49 alone in a prison cell, is somebody who's on the internet. What? The most evil?
Probably got slapped across the face. That's who the doctor is talking to. A little boy who got hit by his mom. To me, that was the culmination of he's still being abused now.
Yeah.
Only this time by the doctor. But look, I mean, he does that, but he has shown the Daleks, Davros, and countless of other life forms who have tried destroying universes, galaxies, planets, you name it, has shown them more compassion than this guy, who he said, you're going to die at the age of 49 alone. No one cares about you. You're going to burn to ash. Oh, well, that's a bit much, isn't it? I mean, that is the most hate-fueled piece of writing I think I've ever witnessed in Doctor. And Doctor Who should not be used as a divider. It should be used as a unifier.
Yep.
What you're doing, Russell, is you're attacking the audience that were loyal to the show for decades upon decades, who funded your wages, may I add, for a number of years, and continue to do so. But here you are telling them that they are unworthy, that they are right-wing fanatics. And it's like, well, the only fanatics I see who make noise, as you call it, are those who continuously go out and protest against reality. You know, every Saturday we see it in the streets of London, encroaching in Jewish areas, which you don't see any Jewish representation. But anyway, and then you know, in Trafalgar Square, where men in skirts are threatening to, you know, F women and R word women and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it you know, and you think that these people are on the right side of history. Well, I'm telling you, there's a lot of people in the 1930s who thought they were on the wrong right side of history, and they weren't.
The issue is this is just going to tire the program into an era. You know, Belinda having a chat with the nurse in the well about blooming sign language and all the rest of it. As the article says here, is that Belinda talking or is it RTD? Moments like these are popping up increasingly frequently in 45-minute episodes and taking attention away from what the show should be doing, which is telling a good story. If it was a 4-part story of 25 minutes or 30 minutes going forward in the future, there will be lines here and there. This is why we like Jago and Lightfoot, why we like certain subplots in classic Doctor Who, because the writer's able to indulge in one character who shows that topic or that issue dealt with in a different way, but it's not the main event. But we have time and space to do that. The trouble is, in 45 minutes, kind of, oh, you do sign language, we don't. Oh, yeah, it should be illegal. Oh, what? What's that got to do with you down a bloody well and you don't know what's behind you?
It's a shaft, by the way. Just
yeah. Who would give a damn about sign language when there's something behind you that's scaring you shitless? I mean, hello. Oh, sorry, I just want to make a political point. It might be the last thing I say before I die, but I want to make...
And all the men died in that, by the way. Every single last one of them, apart from Gatwa.
It was making a political point in spite of the irrationality of the entire setup. If they had devices that preclude the need to sign, why would there still be sign language?
Yeah.
I mean, none of it made any sense. It's just so badly written.
And how is it hundreds of thousands years in the future, whatever, on a different planet where human civilization apparently never existed, would you have sign language anyway? And why would that language not evolve and change? Why does everyone speak in the same English voices or whatever? You know, I mean, where does it end? You know, I mean, it's just pandering. It's patronizing. And I feel sorry for that actress, because I feel like she doesn't seem to grasp that she's just being used in a really quite unsettling way, quite honestly. I'm quite annoyed with this.
Lee, that's kind of my argument with the use of the shooty actor. I know he's got agency in this, but just go with me. Jodie is the first female Doctor, bad scripts, bad stories.
Bad actor.
Shooty is the first black or gay Doctor, and bad stories. So then they're being undersold. Of all the 15 Doctors, suddenly he's more bothered about what's in his trousers. That's not where you want him. And so my concern is with this deaf actress, who she can act. The point is she's being used, as you say, for a political message rather than just let her act and sing.
Yeah, I just find the whole thing quite distasteful, and what would have been much more interesting is if after all of that, and then she got away, that she would have turned out to like a big creepy smile on her face, like, I got away with it. That would have been so cool. But of course, we can't have that. She's just a victim. She's portrayed as a victim, and that's all she is a victim. And that you must feel sorry for her because she's a victim. That is appalling. Would it have been so much more interesting? She'd gone in that lift or that airlock and gone, right, I'm gonna spread this thing across the universe, whatever.
Well,
That would have been so cool.
That her, yeah.
But you can't have that
was
because
the
she's
asset.
yeah.
in that
But you can't have
particular
that because
scenario.
she's disabled, and because she's disabled, she can't be evil, which is incredibly patronizing. It's incredibly restrictive, and it denies disabled actors from enjoying playing great villainous roles. Who doesn't want to play a villain? It's great. I do it all the time.
Yeah, and what you've got here, Cliff, is we had the robot revolution, the incels. You know, it was in the script. You had it happening again with Conrad. Honestly, you can have your political message to a degree, but I think I said it 2 hours ago that I think it's the type of messaging and politics. I think, like we said, I think off stream, we were saying that, you know, who knew the knowledge of how to make fire is political in an unearthly child. Politics, yes, has always been in who in that respect, because it's about people. But it's this identity politics and this ramming a message over about inclusion and this, that, and the other.
It's how they portray it. I mean, you got the first female doctor, so you make her look like a complete idiot who doesn't know anything and constantly gets people killed and runs away like a coward. Then you have the first gay black doctor who is ineffective and cries at every given moment and allows other people to fix and solve the problems for him. Almost virtually every episode, he is either cuffed up or in peril and has to be rescued. What are you saying? And that all gay men have to be really uber effeminate and go yes babes and hun
and predatory.
And predatory, and not only that, but to say hun and babes and all this kind of, that's a very, very narrow band being gay. And it's presented as, well, it was no different from Barry Humphries in the 1970s, which I prefer, quite frankly. But that's not evolving anything. That's not moving things forward. If anything, all you're making is the general audience distrust gays, dislike women. And I'm not saying that people become misogynist because of this or become homophobic, but you're really pushing it when you're trying to portray these characters in an incredibly negative way, and you think it's brave and stunning. And
so they want to pigeonhole it, right?
Yeah. And it's so superficial.
Yeah,
but
it is.
But
and divisive.
But Cliff, this is the problem, isn't it? It turns people away. And if we want a future for the program, we want the writers to be very aware, and none of this nonsense that we get told that, Doctor Who's always been political, so therefore you can do any sort of politics. My argument is it's that wider politics that's always been in Doctor Who. Sci-fi covers the bigger picture, not this parochial contemporary stuff that we're struggling through at the moment. And just as I come to you, Cliff, Wayne Parsons and a few others, the article finishes where the person writing the article says, they are woke. They believe in a lot of the woke issues and all the rest of it, and DEI and everything. But they said, I found the way Rtd'S writing his scripts was making me want to argue with him, even though I agree with him. So the point is, he's not winning one soul. He's actually turning some of his own side against him because it's too on the nose. So in the future, Cliff, politics wider, surely, and that's it.
Yeah, I think that, you know, that's goes back to the laying the groundwork of what's on the table. How do we deal with it? Let your writer, if you're getting good writers in, it's not going to be a problem. I've just only recently delved into Black Mirror, and I think that's without the adult tone and the language and sexuality and stuff like that. Those kind of broad social statements, very dark, very, very risky, could easily translate into a Doctor Who episode series on into the future. But you've got to leave the on the nose present day politics out of it. I don't want to watch a Doctor Who that has something about Putin in it. Nobody cares. It's got to resonate in and of itself. And if you pick up on that incidentally, that's the way sci-fi works best.
So as we start to round up, Lee, the future of Doctor Who, I know we could all be sarky about, well, we don't want it to have a future if it's RTD and shoot it and all, but bigger picture, I obviously, I'm sure you believe in the product of Doctor Who, that it's got so much storytelling and potential, but where do you think, honestly, we've said so many different details about how you can do it, but one thing you want everyone to hold on to as a kind of headline about where we can go with Doctor Who in the future?
Well, the Doctor is an enduring character. He's out of time and space. He's an anachronistic character. That's why he's so enduring. The show is not all about change. That is a lie. It's a show about adventure in space and time. It has change in it, but it's not about being progressive. I mean, you can progress off the edge of a cliff. It doesn't mean anything. You move towards what exactly? Utopia? That's crazy. So I would say, look, Doctor Who can last. It has that enduring quality. But first of all, you have to have faith in Doctor Who as a concept, as a character, as a show. And I think that Russell T Davies in 2005 was very unsure. I think he tried to make it something which was palatable to an audience who were used to things like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and other American shows and things like that, because I don't believe actually that he had faith that Doctor Who would work. And I think he was as surprised as anyone else, because I just don't really believe that he actually. I think it was a bit of a vanity project, quite honestly. I really do. Everything I've seen from this point, the last few years to now,
It's
shows
what happens
me
when fanfic gets a budget.
Yeah, it was fanfic, and he didn't expect it to be as successful, and then he sort of got fanfic out there, and I think the same with Moffat and the same with Chibnall. I think they rested on their laurels. It's a success. We can do what we want. We can mold it into our own image and export it to Disney and make it big, huge, darling, massive. And I think that's a mistake. I think it just became a matter of ego. And I think there's a massive issue within the elites, let's say, of this fandom, who have a sort of almost notoriable sense of ownership. And I think that needs to be wrestled away a little bit. I think it needs to democratize a bit more to people who aren't on board necessarily with how it's been handled. And I think that needs to be reflected in things like the Doctor Who magazine. I think you need a much more of a polemic within there, as much as smoke blowing. So I think fandom itself has to, if you want to talk about change. And it's funny, those who saying it's all about change, don't seem to be able to handle the fact it might be put on a hiatus, or the change that when Ncuti was cast, it wasn't a woman. They didn't like that change. It's funny that it's the same people who complain about AI.
Yeah.
Progressive. So just to wrap up, I would just say it can endure, but the will has to be there, and apathy is a very difficult thing to get past.
Yeah. I think what's missing for me, Cliff, in all of that I've said, is there needs to be a clarity in the vision of where it's going. And then if that clarity of vision comes through the production, the writing, the acting, the audience will think, I know what this program's about and I love it or hate it. At the moment, like I said, it's a bit of a blancmange. It's like, it certainly riles people with some of the messaging. And what's left after that is a husk of the program, rather than it being confident and out there. That's what I would say. Cliff, what about you?
It's definitely lost in the woods right now. And I think that, the person guiding us through that forest is making his own paths. They're not paying attention to, what the original premise was. I think that, I think I've heard before that, was it Worth just saying that even projected potentially a female doctor early on? Who cares? They didn't do it. Now you've got a character that's always been male. Finding the groundwork, finding the rules to go by, and more importantly, defining what not to do with those canonical bits of things that have happened throughout history. I think it's a very short list. I think there's very few things that you can go back through and say you can't do this because it's going to break things. There's very few of those throughout all the stories written already, classic or otherwise. But you have to have that consistency going forward.
And I will say as well, if you try to make it so inclusive all the time, like trying to please everybody, but then you just end up making it so exclusive, it drives everyone away. And I think it's become too niche, but not. I mean, niche isn't a bad thing necessarily, but I think it's become niche in one direction, which is to appease a certain bunch of rainbow flag wavers and no one else. And they just think everyone will be on board because we live in this new utopia, which we don't, and nor should we, because that's someone else's prison, right? So I would just say,
so
we need to make it democratize and get people engaged by intelligent, fun, quirky stories again.
Yeah, well, Pete Merritt here, RTD and Moffat think they own the show, and what they say goes. Get rid of this infection and get a whole new team in. Bad Wolf 2, they don't deserve to make it. Now, televised feedback, good to see you. Please subscribe, all the usual stuff. But the think tank is for people to think and debate. Now, what you've said is, I'm just joining in. To fix Doctor Who, I'd either cut the show back to 1 Sylvester McCoy or 2 Tom Baker, 5th to the 7th. While I like the actors were a drop, nothing against McGann, but the Doctor is British. The thing is, what we've been saying tonight is, if you start to go down the road of erasing an era,
McGann is British.
Yeah, you're gonna hit another problem along the way, and I think the program is putting people off. The last thing we want to do is say, "Oh, well, we're going to." I've heard people say that, and I have a lot of sympathy for it. Like saying nothing after 2017 is kosher. Well, hold on a minute, because you're throwing out an awful lot of stuff as well. Shall we just move forward? That's why I said part of my argument is not to keep going back over, and unpicking that scab. Dangerous stuff sometimes. Greg Smith here. It's unbelievable to think that during the Tennant Smith years, who became a worldwide. How long ago does that feel? It doesn't feel like the same show. What's happened to it?
Well, it's been several different shows throughout New Who run, because it's so jarring how it leaps from one producer or showrunner to another, and it's so breaking. There's no overlap. Like the originals run had such a nice overlap. You had the same, like for one season, you'd overlap between the writers and the producers and the actors, and there'd be nice little continuity. This is so jarring. Boom, boom, boom. It's like my ego, and now my ego.
Yeah. You see, well, talking about ego, as Mr. Squinty Mint says, I wonder whether people who expressed interest 3 years in doing something with the show would touch it with a barge pole. The thing is, ego's an amazing thing. I see it in football management, where basically a team is tanking, appalling. They can't do anything. And then which manager would take that over? Well, number one, that helps. But number two, I'm the one who can save the show. I can save the team. There's always one person. But I always think there's hope there of Squinty Mint in that one. There will be somebody out there, but it needs the BBC not to just say, do what the hell you want. They need to be quite strong, like a writer's room, and really get nitty gritty with it. Televised feedback. New Who Moffat episodes are amazing. The ones before he took over with Matt Smith. Yeah, there's a difference, isn't it? I'd keep a few ideas here and there, but 90% would be got rid of. That's controversial in itself, I suppose, because for good or bad, we had our favourite Doctors, our favourite stories, our eras, our favourite TARDIS crews, and there's other times we didn't. But I think it's always, as soon as you unravel, what's it called? If you've got all this stitch work together, once you start to pull the thread out, other bits fall apart as well. And I think it's always a bit dangerous when you do that. But we have talked and talked and talked and talked, and we can't keep talking. My stomach's hungry. But
Pizza!
Yeah. Can I just say thank you very much, you two. You've put a lot into that, a lot of value there, and hopefully it's given everybody a few ideas. We are not going away. We are going to come up with a manifesto. I will write it to the BBC and I'll be ignored. But the point is, we have a voice and we are not, as Lee said, we are not a relentless noise. We have opinions and
Well, I
they're
don't know, it
valid.
could be quite noisy.
So thank
It's
you.
the content
thank
of
you
the
both.
noise.
Well, it's passion, isn't it? So thank you, number one, Cliff, over there in Texas. Thank you very much for your time, for your ideas, and for contributing so well. Thank you.
Thanks for having me again. Absolutely.
And of course, Lee, I'm glad we got you out of your shell.
Glad
must
to be
be
out of
hard.
my shell.
So thank you all, everybody. Please subscribe, spread the word, and I'll see you again. Who night on Saturday? In a barber's shop. It'll be Desmond's meets Doctor Who. Good
Stop
night.
watching it.